to Red Alert. Civil defense information will be broadcast at 6:40.
West of the Rockies, you're on the air. Hello.
Y2K, how can we prepare?
Stop a few of their machines and radios. Throw them into darkness for a few hours.
We are fighting for our lives. My family must survive.
For 5 years, 1,000 gallons of gas, air filtration, water filtration.
Coming at you from the frozen tundra that is East Central Alberta, Canada, streaming live on YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, Twitch, Rumble, and Odyssey. Welcome back to the workshop where we create community, find freedom, promote preparedness, and share success. I am Toolman Tim. Today is January the 14th, 2024. This is episode 416 of Workshop Radio. How are all my delinquents out there this mighty chilly evening? In just a minute, I have got just the most wonderful guest in the background. She has been my booth buddy for the last 2 years at Prepper Camp, and you guys are going to enjoy everything Jordan has to say. I'm excited. It's going to be a Canadian versus American face-off. No, not really, but it's going to be great. So anyway, I got two quick announcements to get out of the way for you guys, and then we're going to bring Jordan on. Number one, remember our sponsor this evening, and that is Amy Dingman of A Farmer's Kind of Life. She is, as Yozik says, locked and loaded on her content lately. The stuff she's been putting out has been top notch. So if you're looking for the type of thing that will give you inspiration in your old ear holes, give Amy a go at afarmerskindoflife.com. What an awesome, awesome lady. And number two, just want to let you know that I am going to be at, I just announced a new event. So I'm going to be at 4 events on my spring road trip this year. But the newest one is going to be Mountain Readiness Expo in Harmony, North Carolina, May 3rd through the 5th. It's going to be awesome. I cannot wait. Hopefully I can see you there. I will have an affiliate link for tickets coming up really soon, but I just wanted to get it out there in case anybody else knows that they might be able to make their way there. So with that, give me 1 minute here and we will bring on. Hey, Jordan, how are you?
Good. How are you doing?
Good. I haven't seen you in person since late September.
Since Prepper Camp. Yeah.
Yeah. So how you been? You been keeping busy?
It's funny that you say that. I went live Saturday for my morning show. I do mine in the morning for Pheonix Survival. And I have actually spent the time putting up all of the meat I bought for the month and vacuum sealing and trying to get things together. And then I actually made a excursion into town, and that was interesting, having to chase someone down just to restock on some water because the shelves were completely empty. So I had to chase an employee down and be like, hey, do you have any waters?
So I realized, I was doing the math earlier tonight. I believe you are the 7th. I don't know what's taking so long for me to get you on here, but you're the 7th Prepper Broadcast Network podcaster that I've had on the show. So I've had Dave. And
there's only 15.
I know. So I got a few more to go, but you should have been on sooner. But share with us, who is Jordan? Where did Pheonix Survival come from? Give us your, start you back where you came from and work your way through.
So originally I grew up in Arkansas, a small little town, been a country girl all of my life with a big personality, as you already know. You've met me. Sorry. Yeah. I grew up very poor. And very poor in the sense that we had situations in where mustard and crackers did us for a full week. And it was difficult. And growing up by an independent single parent, she was always at the mindset of you have to make sure you have enough skill sets to take care of your family. And at some point, the world is going to go to shit and you need to make sure you can do it. So even though she was anti, at the time, survivalist, and that was the word before prepper. Prepper is a whole new term for us. Yeah. And so that was interesting, being 8 years old and having a full discussion and argument with a grown woman that being a survivalist does not make me an anarchist. And if that's what it takes to be a survivalist, then I'm okay with it. But I digress in that aspect. But I grew up very poor. So that was one of those things where I knew what hunger was. So when I became a mother, I decided I never wanted my children to go through the same amount of hunger as I did. So I was big on, even as a child, I loved hunting and fishing. I wasn't allowed to until I became older because, again, I had a parent who thought that was gross, but she's proud of me. which is funny, conflicting characters on that. But I hunt, I fish, I learned to crochet and sew at a very young age. By 5 years old, I had to fend for myself. By 10 years old, I was taking care of a younger sister and a newborn by myself. So not my children, but siblings. And so it came that I learned to be independent very, very early in the game. And as life went on, it just expanded and learning. And I found PBN probably 12 to 13 years ago as a listener. And then shortly after that, Glenn and James got me to start podcasting. And my children were little, and I was actually the host of a family affair. And so I got to go through keeping my kids on my back while I worked on a friend's homestead. So all of my kids have seen me butcher animals. They've seen me garden and can. And I can say I was that proud mother who drove a non-off-road vehicle off-road just to help my son skin field dress's first kill. So I'm that person. I've got pictures on my Instagram where I'm standing there proud with my 2016 Nissan Rogue in the background that didn't know she wasn't four-wheel drive. And then my show changed for a Pheonix affair because it's not publicly announced, but I'm sure people are aware from those who listened to me before. I did go through a very nasty divorce and had to no longer my kids were on the air. I had to reformat, and now I'm back. And that's where Pheonix comes from, is from, I was reborn from the ashes of their own, because everybody goes through, as James would say, is their own personal apocalypse. But unfortunately, the world is still going to shit as we see it. And the world is still going to throw you, pardon my language, it's still going to throw a bunch of curveballs. So for us, prepping is not going to stop. Prepping is not a hobby. It is a lifestyle for me. So I still crochet. I still spin my own wool. I still sew and cook. And now I'm trying to figure out how to garden in a small space, because I went from 400 acres to play on to like 40 square feet outside. So it's a huge contrast.
So go back to that, 8-year-old Jordan. So your mother was into the idea of survivalism, but she didn't call herself a survivalist. Is that right?
Right. So my mother was into the concept because there was the whole, I may have happened a few years after, was the Y2K. Eventually came about. My mother was like, oh, we have to be ready. And she even brings up that a few years after that, she had an opportunity to buy cattle at $35 a head when it was at its low point, but she never did. But so the argument that was between us is, I was that child who, it didn't matter what I was wearing. I'd get stuck in a tree in a skirt, but I was always climbing trees, always in the woods. I was that kid catching snakes in both hands, and I once came home with a baby copperhead in each hand. And my mother's over there, and I'm like, they're just babies, and I knew they were venomous. I've always loved snakes, but so the argument was, I told her, I am a survivalist. I can't remember how it started. And I said, I will do whatever it takes to survive if the world goes bad. And she goes, oh, so you're an anarchist? I'm like, no, not at all. She goes, so you would shoot a cop if is that you're an anarchist? You would shoot a cop for whatever means. I said, no, but if I have to shoot a cop in order to protect my family because the world has gone to shit, then I will shoot a cop. And it was one time she didn't smack me for using that word, because I promise you this was the conversation. And she goes, so you're an anarchist? I said, well, if that's what it takes to be a survivalist, then yes, I am an anarchist. So it was a huge debate between a grown woman and an 8-year-old.
That's cool that you had kind of that self-awareness of, at 8 years old, to you don't hear that, because I love to find out people's journeys from where they came,
Well, I grew up in the middle of nowhere. My mother moved us from Omaha, Nebraska to Scotland, Arkansas. And it was this tiny little area. I grew up in Clinton with 6 cousins, 3 siblings. My mother was always working, so I always had to. And when I say I was fending for myself by 5, unfortunately, it's not an understatement. You know, we hear people say, oh, I had to do this. No, I literally had to learn how to cook on the stove by myself at 7. And literally at 10 years old, I was taking care of myself, an 8-year-old, and a newborn because my mother was a single working parent. So unfortunately, you know, my mother and I, even today, she feels bad, but at the same time, I tell her I wouldn't be half the woman I am if it weren't for those hard times. Because I can tell you this, my sisters and I are nothing alike. My brother and I are the first 3 of us are the hardest workers, but I'm the most self-aware, and so is my eldest brother because he raised me. So it was one of those, we are more aware of what it takes to take care of a family versus those who were taken care of.
You know, the other night on I did This Week in Prepping, and I read this article from England, and they were talking about how they were encouraging their citizens to become prepared. It was a new thing, like to them anyway. They were real proud of it. And this article, of course, the big end of it was, you know, little to the left, whatever you want to call it. And they said prepping separated. They basically said that prepping was only a rich person's sport or a rich person's thing. And I've had 3 or 4 people. Well, that's what I'm getting at. Like for you, prepping was what, a bit of survival or a bit of,
Prepping is survival, and prepping has gotten me through my tough times. When I went through my divorce, I actually ended up with nothing, and I was on my own, and I moved out to North Carolina with no one, with nothing, with no support. I had no one to help me, only the little bit of money I had, and I had to start over from the ground up. So believe it or not, my MREs get put to good use. I mean, what's the point in having preps if you can't use them?
Absolutely. And do you take a job in demolition for a little while?
I did. I was
I don't know
doing
why
demolition.
I remembered that.
So I was actually a construction worker for about 5 years. I was a certified welder. I had no intentions of going to school. I always wanted to. Don't get me wrong. I love forensic anthropology and entomology. I'd love to go back to school now to be a to work in as a mortician, because death has never bothered me. It's a part of life. I've worked in the ER, so I've seen death up close. I've been in medicine for the last 10 years. I'm actually a licensed pharmacy technician. But yes, construction was my job I knew I could fall back on. And it's what got me through those hard times. Now, it was terrible money out here on the East Coast. I'm not going to lie, terrible money. But it was good, honest work.
So you went from 400 acres to 40 feet, and in that, you don't have to go into the rough times because I know there are rough times, but how did prepping get you through that? What parts? Because I remember you starting your podcast again once, and then kind of stepping back and starting again, which I love hearing. But yeah.
I think it was the endurance of everything. Not the endurance, but the strength behind everything is understanding I have started over, that I can do this again. It was, for me, prepping is a little bit at a time, right? Now, I grew up very poor. I don't make a lot of money, so it's a little bit at a time. Everything is a small step. And I think for me, starting over on the East Coast, it was the same thing. Is I prepped for this very reason. I had extra food for this very reason. I took each little step because that's what it is. You don't have to jump head straight into it with all this money, like you're saying. Is people expect, oh, you're going to buy the best stuff. No, you're going to start out with the lowest stuff, and you're going to learn from there, and you're going to stair step and stair step and stair step. And even now, even though I'm in a better place, I still am taking those stair steps to get myself even better, even more stable, to make sure I'm at a point. We went through a point where I was out of work for 6 months because I had just had our baby, which that was a surprise starting over. That's another thing with prepping. We are thrown curveballs we don't expect. So it's okay. My pantry is back up. Okay, we're good there. Okay, our water is back up. Oh, okay. Our water filtrations are all where they need to be. So now it's in the process of getting my cannon back where it needs to be. So it's all stair steps, no matter what you do.
How does that feel, pulling your preps back together on the other end of all that bullshit?
Honestly, it's a breath of fresh air because my preps have always been consistent for me. have been that one constant for me throughout everything I've been through. When I lived in Mississippi, when my 3 kids were right there, that was always my constant. That was something that was always baseline for me. Oop, I didn't mean to hit that. My baseline for me. So I knew my kids would never be hungry. I knew that if we fell on tough times, there was food. I knew if we fell on tough times, there were things we needed in the house. It was that constant. I'm trying to think what
It's
the line to
cathartic, but
support.
yeah, it's your. I don't know. You know what? So Becky and I, for many years, we had what we called the toilet paper closet, and that was whenever we'd get paid, we would stock it up with toilet paper because we always said, the kids are always going to have shit tickets and they're always going to have food, right? And that's what it came down to. We never wanted to run out, and I get it. Absolutely. Maybe cathartic, or it's your own little personal bit of control, perhaps, out of all the madness, maybe.
It is. For me, it's more of a like a
Calming?
weight off my shoulders to know. Yeah, because even though I know over the next few weekends, I'm going to have to drive the 2.5 hours to my storage unit to start slowly bringing things back down, it makes me feel like I'm finally closing that last bit of chaos that was left in my life. I mean, there's always going to be chaos, but to be able to have my books, to be able to have my cannon jars, to be able to have my number 10 cans of 30-year food that I have put up, knowing I have that gives me that that comfort and that bit of a secure blanket feeling of
Peace of mind.
Yeah, it really is a peace of mind, because if tough times hit, and which they have hit, I know that no matter what, I can feed myself, I can feed my partner, and I always make sure I can feed my children. I'll go without before they do. But it is that peace of mind. And then knowing, so I'm a crafter. I spin my own wool. I crochet. I sew. So knowing I have those here with me is I know my family won't go without, whether it be something as simple as hats, mittens, or sweaters, or patching their clothing, or making my little ones sleepers, or whatever is. I have the ability to make my family what they need. So if my family doesn't have to go without, then that's my primary thing is I would rather suffer before I ever let my children or my family go through the same things I grew up going through. So for me, my background is my premise of why I am and what makes me who I am. Because growing up poor, it makes me realize there's nothing wrong with playing outside. I think children need to spend as much time outside as possible. You know what? Kids are going to get worms. That I know it's probably less common to hear of now, and people look at me like, "What did you just say?" Well, guess what? We caught them as kids because we were picking up stuff and all sorts of things, and it was a part of it. Growing up as a country child, children need to get hurt. And in the sense, not critical, but they need to fall down. They need to scratch. I used to tell my children, what happens? Why do we fall down? And they go, to get back up again. I said, exactly, because mistakes are a part of what we are. We learn real quick, don't touch certain things because they hurt. I'm one of those parents who first time told. If you do it after I've told you the first time, one, you either have the consequences, or two, you find out why I said the first time. We don't touch that because it's hot. Am I going to still do the Southern Yeah. But if they still touch it, I mean, one, I'm going to take care of them. But two, they learn. Children have to fall. Children have to make mistakes. And it's kind of one of those things where it's better to let your kids go through this to a degree so they understand. Because I'm one of those parents in which I spoke about what was going on with my children. I explained it on their level. So, I mean, for me, prepping is life. Prepping is a part of my life, and it's been a part of my children's life. So all of my kids had their own go bags. All of my kids understood our preps or how much food we had. Now, I did explain to my children, we don't talk about exactly what we have with other people. It's none of their business. My son actually got in an argument with a kid at school because of the pew pew situation. A kid told him, "Oh, that's not how you shoot a gun," and da 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 and da 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 da. And I'm tickled. And my son comes home. He goes, "But mom, he's wrong." And I'm like, "You're right. He is wrong." But he's one of those individuals. It doesn't matter if you tell them the correct things, they're going to still spill incorrect facts. I said, and people like that, it doesn't matter how you say it or how many times you say it, they're not going to listen. I said, so at that point is when you decide, is this worth still arguing about? Because there are going to be people in the world that even though you're right, they're going to take it to the grave. That I said, and those are the people you don't want to be around, because if he's saying this is how you handled this weapon, he's going to get someone hurt. I said, so that just means we won't be around him in those situations. And so my son, because we taught gun control at a very young age, even starting with Nerf guns.
Cool.
Because we want to teach proper gun safety, proper understanding of a weapon. I mean, even all of my kids could shoot all of the same weapons I could. My son had shot all of the same 30-06. My brain stopped.
That's okay. I took Charlotte to the range the other day, and she shot my 308. So I was pretty impressed with that. Yeah, she did well. First time.
But that's something I integrated prepping into everything. So this is the first time in my life I've actually had a partner who's a prepper too, versus someone who goes, I don't want to see it. I don't need to know. You can do it. I just don't need to see it. I now have a partner who goes, okay, I understand. So how about this and this? I'm like, okay, I'm over here writing notes. Like, I have a whole notebook, not this one, the other one's put up, but I have a whole notebook where we have titles and categories, and we sit down and we make lists, and then we talk about those, and I make pinpoints based on what we're talking about so we can plan and prep together.
The other night, so it was minus 46, and Alberta was saying they were going to do random or rolling brownouts because we didn't have enough power for us. And so Becky and I did that exact thing. We sat down and we had a conversation about it. And how much better is it to have a supportive spouse who's in on it with you than the one who's just, whatever, do your thing?
I love it. We are vastly different preppers, though. I'm from the South. He's from Baltimore, which is the North for us. You're the extreme North. I'm the homesteader skill set. I'm going to, be able to garden. I'm going to be able to clean my kills. He worked in a kosher butcher shop, so he can do that. But he has much more, because he lived inner city Baltimore. So he has a much more rough and tumble mindset of survival than I do. But it is a breath of fresh air to have someone of a like mind, that I don't feel like I have to hide my preps. I don't have to, for example, with my ex-husband, I had one little cabinet, and I had other spaces, but mainly one cabinet that he never looked in. He said he never wanted to see it. To him, it would stress him out because it was just clutter and mess, even though it was our backup pantry. It was our reserves. And I had an active pantry and our backup pantry. So he didn't mind the active pantry because it was all neat and tidy. And the reserve pantry, even though it looked chaotic, was ordered to me. But I only had, a certain amount of space in which I could get, I'm hand movements everywhere, could get into. So that was a big thing for me. So I love it. I mean, there's nothing wrong with having a partner who's not into prepping. It helps if your partner doesn't care if you don't prep. I mean, if you prep, that's easier versus someone who's going to fight you on prepping. But having a partner who preps or is open to your prepping and understands really is a breath of fresh air. Because it's like the other day I told him, I think we need to rearrange certain things to this spot. And he's like, okay, that makes sense. We can do that this weekend. It's like, what?
I like that a lot. So you're in South Carolina now? Is that right?
Mm-hmm. I'm in Myrtle Beach. I am not shy about the fact I'm in Myrtle Beach.
So it's slightly warmer there than it is where I am at the moment, I'm guessing.
It is. We are at, for you, it'd probably be a toasty 47. For me, I'm freezing.
So yeah, take 87 degrees off that, and that's roughly where I'm at right now. So
No.
yeah.
Sorry, no. I'm with Phil. No.
Oh, it was
But
bad.
I'm Southern. I grew up Arkansas. I lived in Mississippi for 10 years. Now I
Mhm.
live here for going on 3 years. And I can tell you right now, Arkansas is getting snow right now where I grew up. And Arkansas did have much colder weather, which throws people off, colder weather than where I'm at here. The ocean actually changes the whole climate. So during the summer, we're cooler because of the ocean. And during the winter, we're warmer because of the ocean. So that ocean acts like a barrier in so many ways. So it's vastly different from the deep south that I grew up in.
So are you guys getting ready for a cold snap right now, like it seems like the entire continent is, or no?
Not really. So,
No.
which is funny because I have it pulled up in front of me, the Weather Channel. Tomorrow is supposed to be a high of 62. Tuesday is
Oh,
supposed to be 56 and raining. Now we don't hit a cold snap until next weekend, and which our high is supposed to be 38 and our low is supposed to be 21.
oh wow. You're doing well, so you do get well below freezing then, don't you?
We do. We've actually gotten a few ice storms. Now that's something that people don't realize is in the South, we tend to get a lot of ice storms. Like I went back home to Arkansas last Christmas and we got snowed in and frozen in for Christmas.
Wow.
So I had to actually drive across the ice to Memphis, Tennessee to get to the airport to pick someone up, and it was iced and snowed in, and a lot of people, everything was shut down. So I mean, in Arkansas, we get a lot of ice storms, and so North Arkansas, and so does Mississippi in certain parts.
So I was trying to figure out how we'd kind of balance this out with North and South. So what are, let's say pick the three biggest, if you were preparing for the events that could happen in your area, what are the things that you guys prepare for that are most likely?
If you mean natural events,
Yeah, we'll go with
tornado
natural.
and
Yep.
hurricane are our biggest two.
Tornado.
So tornado is huge across the South.
Okay.
In Arkansas and Mississippi, I actually have been in tornadoes personally. In Clinton, Arkansas, we had a tornado jump our house and took out a lot of the houses up on the hill and all the houses down and to the right.
Wow.
I was sitting in the tub, and when they say a tornado sounds like a freight train, they are not lying. It exactly sounds like a train on top of you. I've been through a few there. And then in Mississippi, probably about 6 years ago, I want to say it may have been maybe not quite as long, maybe been 4 years ago. A tornado came through Como, Mississippi, where I was living, and about 5 or 6 houses down, while we were sitting in the living room 3 days before Christmas, took out our neighbors' houses. Took out
Wow.
several houses, went across the road, knocked a semi over, actually took out a trailer. My brother called me, witnessed the trailer getting taken out. And unfortunately, there was an elderly lady in that trailer. But tornadoes are a big part of it for us in the South. We had tornado warnings not too long ago here. We actually had a few tornadoes hit not far from here in Carolina Forest, or had one hit and it devastated the area, but not near as bad as it could have. It was a very minor tornado, which I'm sure to anyone who's not used to them probably thinks any tornado is major. But I've been through the same storm system that took out Joplin, and I've witnessed Joplin, Missouri, when they got taken out by their tornado right after. And I've seen tornadoes take where they'll take out houses, jump, miss one house, it's perfectly intact, and then the house next to it is completely gone.
That blows my mind. How much warning do you usually get?
Sometimes not very much. Sometimes you get plenty with the storm, but you never know with the storm systems. The only reason you get used to certain things as tells,
Sure.
and not all the tells are the same. The wind will come from multiple directions. The sky or everything could get completely still. Sometimes the sky will turn an eerie yellowish green color.
Yeah.
And so there's just so many different tells, but unfortunately, when you're used to it, because my birthday's in February, that was always peak tornado season growing up. So I always had a tornado warning within, if not the week of my birthday. So it was, yeah. But out here, hurricanes. Yes, all right. Green skies make me sick. Sorry, I now can see some of the stuff. Now I realize what was popping up on the screen. So yes,
Okay.
the green sky is a big tell. Everything getting calm or the wind coming in multiple directions, because the wind from a tornado, most storms come one way or another. With the tornado, you're going to see it change in directions because it's trying to pick up speed. Now I've seen plenty of water spouts out here, which is interesting in its own. But the big other thing now that I'm here on the East Coast is tornadoes. So for when I was in Mississippi and Arkansas, a lot of those hurricanes or storms would throw tornadoes. So for us out here is making sure, luckily I'm far enough inland, even though I'm 15 minutes from the beach, when the hurricanes hit, it doesn't affect us personally in our house nearly as much as the rain and thunderstorms do.
Sure.
But we still have to keep in mind, okay, do we have this much water? Do we have this much food? Are we situated with most of it up on the second story of the house in case we can't get down? That's another one, is a lot of people out here. I'm glad I'm no longer in the condo on the beach, because I've heard stories from those individuals who currently live in the condo and have watched the hurricanes coming in and saying the whole condo is just waving. Yeah, no, I couldn't do it.
I grew up on the East Coast, Nova Scotia, and we'd get tail end of hurricanes occasionally, and occasionally we'd get actual hurricanes. Like we had Hurricane Juan go through in September, I don't know, it was 03 or 04, and it was Category 2, and it was pretty bad, but it wasn't an everyday occurrence for us at all. But how does, for you, what's prepping? Well, there's not a lot you can do to prep for a tornado, I suppose, but what were some of the things you would do? Like if you didn't have a shelter, for instance.
So I always make sure I know where the safest point in our house is. No house is safe against a tornado, but having that extra precaution can help. For us here, it's the little space under the stairwell or that hallway furthest in the middle lower half of the house. Back home, it was the center room and the hallway. In Mississippi, another way I would prep, and this is going to probably sound a bit morbid to you, is I made sure each of my kids were wearing their backpacks. And have them strapped to the chest so they wouldn't come off, because there were plenty of times where I've heard stories and have been in not far from where a family member had been sucked out of the house from the tornado.
Oh, wow.
And there have been times where infants had been sucked out and the infants survived and the children survived. And so it was one of those precautions. Even though it's a bit morbid, I made sure my kids wore their backpacks, and in their backpacks, in sealed baggies, were an extra set of clothes, was a comfort item. Oh, okay. Open windows a little. Yeah, that's another one I've heard about. We just immediately got away from it. I'm not going near the windows if it's blowing hell or anything like that. But yes, that is correct. You open the windows just a little bit to keep them from blowing out. But I would make sure they had a comfort item, because everybody needs something to help them through that time. All my kids had, everybody had to put on shoes. Everybody had to have on clothing.
I wouldn't have thought of that. Makes sense.
Shoes are a big thing, because if you get blown out or if the house collapses around you and you're fine, the last thing you want to do is be walking around and stepping on broken glass and shards of wood with your bare feet. So that's another thing. Beth Emily is absolutely correct. That was a big one, was shoes. Backpacks with, like I said, are clothes. I made sure all my kids had an MRE. My kids all knew how to open an MRE, or some nabs, peanut butter crackers, as we call them in the South, as nabs. It's an old brand. Nabs was the brand. That's just what we call them. And then a bottle of water or two. Okay. And then emergency blanket, like the little silver ones you can fold up. A poncho. Let's see. They had their shoes on. If I had an extra pair, they usually had a pair in that bag, an extra pair of shoes, because when you're covered, you want to change. I always kept them in first aid kit, and all of my kids, all three of them, had water filtration systems. So in case something happened to their water, it spilled, they all had an extra empty bottle with their Sawyer mini straws.
Nice. And they knew how to use them.
Mhm.
How old were they at that time?
Oh, God. My youngest was probably about 4.
Wow. Okay.
3
Good
or
for
4,
them.
but only because my middle child was was known for trying to drink straight out of the pond every time we went fishing. So with that, I made sure each of my kids had their Sawyer mini filters, in which they come with a little
Mhm.
pouches you can put water in. And all of those stayed in waterproof containers as well. And then I made all of my children put their packs on. And then when we went into the hallways or anywhere, we always had a mattress or pillows and blankets to try to pad us in.
That makes sense. That shoe one was worth the price of admission alone. I wouldn't have thought of that. We would have just huddled around. You know what I mean? Like, because
Shoes, no. Shoes are a big one because what are the one thing you need to take care of yourself? You hear in the military, you hear anywhere else, is your feet. And
right,
if you have to walk, if you have to hike out, say you're in a very urban, a very rural area, your vehicle is going to be blown away.
right.
Most likely, or your vehicle's not going to work. How long are you going to huddle there? And how long is it going to be till someone finds you? Oh, another thing, in my oldest child's pack was fire starter, and in all three of them were hand warmers, like the
Mm.
hot hands. So the
Yep.
body, the foot, and the hot hands were in all of their packs to get them warm.
What about contact information?
So each of them had a piece of paper thank you for saying that, had a piece of paper with their name, their parents' name, and our phone number and our address. I didn't want to
Mm.
put too much information because the last thing you want is somebody, oh, well, so and so,
Yep.
unfortunately, you get perverts who take advantage of any situation. So I always made sure. And then next to kin, which was usually at the time my mother in law and her phone number.
So how much has that prep changed now that you live near the coast? And I would have guessed, so are hurricanes your biggest concern at this point?
No,
No,
more
still.
tornado. I
Okay.
still worry about tornadoes, but I grew up around tornadoes.
Sure.
Actually, I think what scares me the most is the heavy population.
I wanted to get to that. Absolutely. Why is that?
So I grew up very rural, very suburban almost, and this is very too populated for me. I'm used to being an hour, 30 minutes to an hour out from like a major city. Myrtle Beach is a big area, but Myrtle Beach is now more like little New York.
Oh,
All the New Yorkers and everything have moved down here, and there's just so many people on top of each other, and I'm not comfortable in it. My partner, he's from, like I said, inner city Baltimore, so he's used to people being on top of each other. It's nothing new to him, but it kills him because I'm that person peeking through the blinds. I was like, who's that? They shouldn't be walking through our yard, you know, because we have a heavy transient population and a heavy homeless population that up until recently, they would cut through our yards all the time. And I have security cameras up just because I don't know who these people are. A couple years back, we had someone coming around trying to open people's doors to get into their
mhm.
homes. And it's like, I don't like a heavy populated area. For me, it's not my idea of comfort.
So do you have kind of a threshold where you would bug in and where you would bug out for you guys? Or do you have a bug out plan yet for where you live?
Yes. Yes. So we do. We actually have even considered if hopefully, in any ideal world or any ideal situation, we would have a heads up, right? We would hope.
Mhm.
But we've got to understand the likelihood of having a heads up beyond our own sense and everything going on is very unlikely. We hope for that and we plan for that, but we also plan for those situations and where we have no warning. I do live on
Mhm.
the East Coast. Some of the major ports, there's ones in Charleston, there's the international port in Baltimore. You've got the military bases up and down the
Sure.
coast. So, we're not going to get as much of a heads up as, say, people who live further in state. Um, We have looked at routes out. I'm going to tell you right now, I live actually right next to the evacuation route. But the problem is on a good day, it is hard to get down that road.
Sure.
All the traffic, there's a turn bridge, you get hung up on it. And the last thing I want to do is get stuck in traffic with a 5-month-old baby and a car full of goods. And so that makes it difficult. So we have had to look at routes of going against the grain of traffic, in the sense of, would it be more ideal to go 30 minutes south or 30 minutes north and then go out to the least traveled path? Because you've got to think, as you hear the saying, if you've thought of it, 100 other people have the same idea.
Right.
And so that's something we want to think about, is I know how quickly I can get to that evacuation route. The problem is there are 100 other people who can get there just as quick as I can. So then what do you do when you're stalled in bumper to bumper traffic? That's the difference between life and death in certain situations. And that's the difference between getting out safely and getting out quickly. So we have routes in that. As far as our main place, yes, it is several hundreds miles away. But we do have safety zones, in the sense of every 200 miles we'll stop. We have a place to stop. We have somewhere we can be safe. We have,
Mhm.
it is understandable that people, or our listeners, are going to have places they want to go that are 800 miles away from their home. That's fantastic. That's great. But you have to keep in mind how you're going to get there. How much gas is it going to take? I can tell you down to the T. I know exactly how much gas and how many miles exactly it's going to take me. I make the drive all the time. Where are your stops? Know your stops. Know where you're safe. Know where the best in and out exit is. When I travel just to travel, I always stop at the same areas, so my partner knows. I'm a creature of habit, but at the same time, I know what's safe. I know which gas stations I'm going to go to. You want to know your ins and outs of your route, and you need to know the alternates. So for us, we are going to write down our routes in case, for any reason, say, for example, he's at work, I'm home with our son, I have to bug out. I'm going to grab what I have and I'm going to go. Okay. Technology is not always a guarantee. We know in emergency situations, cell phones and tech typically don't work, or don't work reliably. So in that case, having our routes written down is a safe plan for both of us, because he knows what route I'm going to take and what route he can take to meet at a certain point. He knows how fast I'm going to be going, where I'm at, because I already know. And it's great to practice your routes, practice your trips. And I know how fast I'm going on this route. I know how long it takes me to get to this point, vice versa. And him knowing that, and vice versa, is going to be what saves us, to keep us to be able to meet back together. So, and that is a big one, because he's always said, if something happens, you and our son get out however you have to, with as much as you have, I will be behind you.
Sure.
Because, the way he sees it is, me stopping and staying behind could be more detrimental to our safe than taking the lead and going and him following.
So,
one person can travel easier than a woman and a baby.
Absolutely. So that evac route, is that, once you get on it, do you think that it would travel quite well during an emergency, or would it get clogged up?
Absolutely not. Absolutely not.
Awful.
So that route, that evac route, actually takes you down a bunch of back roads. So there is no major highway from here to west. There's not. It takes a while before you hit one. So you have to actually go down all these farm towns and back roads to get to it. I have traveled multiple, and I can tell you right now, I would rather go an hour and a half to 2 hours out of my way to get out than try to go the main route everybody and their brother's going to take. Because on a good day, I have gotten caught in traffic down those dirt roads trying to get to the main highway to travel home for holidays.
Makes sense. It's funny that I guess they have to label an evac route somewhere, right? But
right.
Yeah.
And
So,
there's multiple, but I mean, I have a friend who's up north. She goes, "Once you come up here," I said, "I'm not going north." Anyone who's been on, what is it, 95 between
oh,
Baltimore and Virginia, there's no way in hell. I drove down it coming back from Christmas, and that was understatement bullshit. I'm not gonna drive that road again. You couldn't get me on that road. It is a death trap waiting, and people die on it all the time. So no, no.
it's horrible. I have done
I
95 from Maine down to New York City, that whole way. I've done it down in Florida, and it does not get any better north to south. It is just miserable.
Yeah, no, you couldn't pay me to take that route out. Or, and I have friends who live up that way who said, "You can come stay here." And I'm like, "I love you, but I'm not risking my life to get to you." Unfortunately for me, it's not a safe route.
So, since we're doing the north versus south thing, something that
Mhm.
kind of came to mind, do you guys train for active shooter situations, or have you ever talked about that at all? Not to put you on the spot, but I was kind of curious if that's something that you think about,
What do you mean as far as like in
like
a mall
being in a
setting, if we're
mall
in a
or something.
public?
Yeah.
So we have discussed it. We both carry. South Carolina, very open to people with weapons, very open to the gun owners, which is a huge change for him from Baltimore to here because they are so stringent. You have to have a license just to purchase a gun in Baltimore versus, down here, you don't. I mean, I grew up in the South, so being able to have a gun is as easy as one, two, three. And which is funny, I actually just took my gun off of me when I got home from the store because I keep a gun on me at all times.
Nice.
Um, Only because I don't know who the next person is. I have encountered situations. Actually, I have had a situation back in the day where actually not me personally, my former mother-in-law did, in which someone looked like he was interested in trying to nab our son.
Hmm.
He kept following her around the store. She looked at him, didn't pay no mind, pulled my son closer to her to get him out of the way because she thought he wanted to go down the aisle. And she said that this gentleman stopped, looked at her, looked at my son, looked at her, looked at my son, looked at her, and then booked out the front door. Like
Huh.
took off on a dead run. And we had issues of sex trafficking. So those were situations even early on. And I've had people come up, "Well, you can pinch me. Why don't you come over here?" I've had people follow me out of the store when I had my kids, to the point I have friends who are security guards at that store that I'm like, "Hey, I need you to walk me and my kids to the car." And then it got to a point I refused to go grocery shopping with all three kids by myself because if someone came up and grabbed three kids and went running different directions, what am I supposed to do? So
So
early on, I started carrying very early on.
I like that. So how's it changed again now that how old's your baby now?
5 months.
5 months. So how much has that changed? How have your plans changed, and what have you changed in your preps to handle having a newborn baby?
Everything's changed. I mean, you still have the bases, but I got used to my youngest now is 8. Well, aside from my baby. And I have a teenager. And so for them, they're very capable of doing things on their own. They're very understanding of I can dress myself, I can feed myself, I can do this, I can do that. My infant isn't. My
Hmm.
infant's whole entire premise is mommy. I am his milk machine. I am his source of entertainment. I'm his source of comfort. I am my child's world. And so I have to now consider, okay, do I have enough diapers? Do I have his diaper bag set in a way that if something happens, I can grab him and go? So that has changed our preps in the sense of my son is exclusively breastfed. So I don't have to worry about packing formula. He is getting to an age where we'll eventually start introducing food when he hits about 6 months, 7 months, depending how his breastfeeding is going. We'll introduce food, but until then, I am his food source. So it's making sure I'm intaking enough food for him. enough calories. I'm hydrating enough because that's one less thing I have to prep for him. I have to make sure I'm taken care of. But diapers, clothes, and he's not a small baby no more. This baby is wearing 6 to 9 months on the lower end and 12 months on the higher end. So I have to I go through, I look at what's on clearance. Right now, Walmart has a bunch of stuff, sweats and stuff for $3. I bought a bunch of 12 months, but that's for right now. And then I plan on going back and buying a bunch of 18 months and up because I mean, what's the point if I can't clothe my child? So that's another thing is I always prep it the way I did for my son in the sense of you don't have to break the bank in order to, take care of your children. You want the best for them, but clothing, they grow out of so quickly as children that it's not something you have to worry about having the best. You just want to make sure they're warm. I made him a cardigan that will grow with him. It's a double-breasted cardigan. So the buttons sit one way, and then as he gets bigger, it will have 2 buttons showing because it expands, the sleeves unfold. So it's what can I do to take care of him? So it's simple things. The babies don't have to have 100 pairs of clothes. They don't. That's something I never understood. Three sets of onesies or whatever, because babies grow so fast. But the big one is diapers, wipes. Does he have medicine he take? Does diaper cream? Those are the basic items, and blankets. I'm a woman, so we have 100 blankets in the house. But making sure your child is warm. It's a big thing for me.
How about, I'd like to talk about your crocheting just a little bit, because you don't have to be around Jordan for more than 35 seconds to know that one of her passions in life is crocheting and dealing with things like that. I know she's the crochet lady at prepper camp. So where did that first come from? Where did that passion come from, and what's it led into?
So I have actually been crocheting since I was 7.
Okay.
I learned crocheting. So at 7 years old, I had an aunt who did, and she taught the best she could. She actually taught me wrong. And I learned that over the years as I taught myself to read patterns. But she taught me the best way she knew how, which was fine, because in middle school, my crocheting, I actually sold it even then. I'd make Spirit Day beanies, little toboggans.
Yeah.
And that was my doorway into having my own currency. Because I grew up poor. I went through programs. I worked a job. That money always went to my family. My crocheting, I got to keep for myself. And that's only because no one knew. So for me, it really was an outlet. It was something I knew early I could make things from. I could take care of myself. I could take care of my family. I love to sew. And so those two went hand in hand. I'm always alternating between the two. And it's funny that you say that, because I actually brought mine up with me.
Big surprise. Yeah, no.
No, it's one of those things where I'm like, right now I'm making practicing with a pattern, and if I like it, I'm going to make a bunch of them. But it's going to be a long sleeve caplet shrug, if that makes sense. So it's going to come above the bust,
Okay.
but it's going to have 2 long sleeves. And for me, that works because I'm always wearing my son. I only really need warmth from here up and down my arms, because I put off a lot of heat. I'm not trying to make my baby sweat. So that's something I can wear, or if I'm out and hiking, because my torso heats up quicker than my arms. So I don't like to have my arms or hands cold. So, but like I said, crocheting has been a big part of who I am for a long time. I couldn't imagine not doing it. I started at 7. Probably young adult, I started learning how to read patterns. And actually, I learned on YouTube thanks to Bob Wilson 123. She's an Australian crocheter, and she would teach you how to crochet and read a pattern at the same time. So my expansion for that went from there. And then, probably about 10 years ago, 11 years ago, I learned to spin wool. And it has ever since been a huge part. I've owned Angora rabbits. I helped friends shear their sheeps. I actually processed a bunch of merino not too long ago here on my porch. My
Oh,
neighbors thought I was insane, but I love it. I would, yeah, that is definitely one of my preps that is not necessarily a necessity for anyone else, but it is a necessity for me that I've told my partner if shit hits the fan, at least one full fleece and my spinning wheel is coming with me. I don't give a damn what it has to be left behind. I am bringing my spinning wheel.
yeah. But what I like about it, even at a young age, you took it's not just a life skill, but you also turned it into kind of a vehicle to independence as well. Used it as an entrepreneurial venture, and
Mhm.
now you. How often do you teach it to other folks?
Not as frequently as I should be. I actually had every intentions, and I, with everything that's gone on, I haven't been able to
Mhm.
get my website up. I wanted to be able to make videos and sell them. So individuals or teach classes on Zoom. Um, I was back home. I was teaching a few women locally, and I enjoy it. I really do. Uh, I I feel like everybody should have it. But I
Yeah,
also learned very early a lot of men knit, a lot of older men knit from the South because they were taught that was how they were taught to learn patience and focus. And during the winters when things were rough, it was their way of their mothers being able to tone down that boy energy.
sure.
But I think everybody should. My son used to loom knit, and I actually
Mhm.
still have hats and stuff that he's made me and our entire family when he was loom knitting. So I think it is a good hobby to have for people who want something to distract them. Like for me, crocheting makes me happy. I can sit down and watch a movie and I crochet. Actually, truth be told, I can't sit still. So if I have something I'm doing, it's the only way my partner can get me to watch a movie with him is that I'm either crocheting or spinning because, I mean, as the saying in the South would go, idle hands is the devil's playground. So I have to keep moving.
Absolutely. I like it. I think you could make, I know you could make quite a bit of money doing that. And I think you
I
probably
enjoy
will.
it.
Yeah,
Actually, sorry, I had to put a piece of gum.
you're good.
So actually, my crocheting has saved us. So when I was married, my ex-husband was laid off. I was working as much as I could just to make ends meet. And I crocheted enough to be able to afford my kids' Christmas that year. I think I made like 40 something hats and 2 blankets within 2 months. And it was more than enough to be able to afford Christmas for my kids. And then not last year, not the year before that, my crocheting that I sold was enough to pay for the replacement battery my car had to have.
Isn't that
And
awesome?
then and then last year I sold all of my wares. All but like two things. I sold all of my wares. I sold everything that that paid for the trip itself. And so that was a good makeup for us because my partner, if he's not working, he doesn't get paid. So it
Sure.
made up for those days. So it was nice to know that my talent, my fun, um, can financially, offset. It's not a huge fix yet, but I'm getting there. So I have, for anyone who's not a part of it, I have my own hat that my listeners named when I was with the family affair called the Ferg. And if you watch any of James, our intrepid commander, he does a lot of Instagram lives. He actually wears it. It is like a gator. You can wear it as a gator. You can wear it. His kids call it a ninja mask. They'll wear it over their
Oh, I
face.
like
You can
that.
wear it as a beanie, as a messy bun beanie. So if you want to wear your ponytail through it, you can. I'm one of those. I want something that's as multifunctional as possible. No, yeah. So technically, I did crochet a car battery. That worked.
I like that. Yeah, Cabot Porter, for those in the audio only, put a comment up, says, so you crocheted a car battery. And technically that's true, isn't it?
Yeah. And mind you, that type of car, it cost me $250 for that battery.
Wow. Oh, yeah.
So And so I was glad it didn't take out of funds I didn't have. Um, but so another big item right now that some of the listeners have liked that I'm going to start mass producing after I finish my little personal project is my harvest bag. I was practicing at first. I sent a few out to a few. I think I had asked you, but you didn't have a mailbox for the US when I was asking people about the bags.
Yep, I do. Yep.
When I was sending out my prototypes, I was using acrylic, and I made a few acrylic, but I'm now switching to cotton. I use a cotton liner, and it is almost like a Japanese knot bag. 1 inch short, the strap is long, one strap short, and you slip it through. And I line it with cotton, and it now has a pocket thanks to Sarah Hathaway.
Of course.
So it's one of those things. I make clothing, sweaters. I just finished a vest I have to sew buttons on. I don't know if you've seen that. I don't know. Do you follow my show page Instagram?
I follow your personal page and your Pheonix page. So maybe I did. Yeah.
I don't know if you can see it.
It's hard to get it to focus.
Yeah.
For those, so I don't forget, I pinned your Pheonix Instagram page in tonight's comments, and if I think of it, I'll put your personal one in there too.
And I've started to try to start posting more in the Pheonix Survival. But yeah, so they can see some of the crochet with the Fergs. I make acrylic and I make wool. I do make the wool ones. I can use commercial wool. I can use untreated wool. I can do hand spun wool, but I'm going to tell you, and this is what kills people. I had someone do it at prepper camp. Come up and ask me, do you have any mitts and do you have any hats or balaclavas? I was like, yes. And I showed him, and he asked for one of them. He goes, how much? And I told him, and he goes, no, I'm not paying that for it. Well, this isn't Walmart. I had to take my time, my money, and I have to make it. So acrylic's going to be cheaper. It is your commercial product. I can do store-bought wool that's untreated or commercial treated wool, which is going to cost a little bit more, but hand spun wool is not cheap. And hand spun blended wool with Angora is definitely not cheap. And so you run into this, even I'm sure you run into this too in any kind of place where we put up our booths and our vendors, is people want Walmart prices for handcrafted or hand time, our time put in products. And that's like, I've had people tell me, I can buy the same thing at Walmart for $10. Okay, we'll go to Walmart. I stand behind what I make. Yes, you're going to pay $30 for one of my Fergs, but I'm going to stand behind it. And I promise you it's going to be thicker and warmer. And
that's
I make
all
what I
you
make.
charge? $30
on the acrylics. Yeah, on the acrylic. I shouldn't charge it that low. My old man gets on to me because I undercharge, but I try to make things I was like, I grew up poor wanting handcrafted things. And so I don't want to kill people. But now my wool ones, yes, they do cost a lot more.
What do they?
I think for Black Friday,
I think
for Black Friday, I was only charging like 40 or 45 for my Black Friday special, but I typically sell them around $50 to $60 a piece for the wool, and then 80 for the hand spun, only because on hand spun, I have to put all of my time in. Now my sweaters, about 120. The vest, I think I was around 90, but again, that vest is 100% wool. So it's just, and I see people put things on Etsy, and I have an Etsy. I just don't post on there because Etsy is now the new eBay.
Really?
It's not limited to just handcrafted items.
Did not know that.
Yeah. So I have it, and I'm going to be working on putting up a made to order for certain items. But I've always had the best luck with people contacting me and like, hey, do you make this? Because I've sold cowled hoods that have gone to New York. Yeah, Dave H, it is cheap. It's probably cheaper than it should be. But for craft shows and stuff, I enjoy doing what I do. But I'm going to be honest with you, if I could get more people interested in it, I probably would sell it at the appropriate price. But it's just more or less of, some seasons I make a killing. I make a killing. And other seasons, nobody wants to buy a thing. But I've made slippers that have gone to California. I've made cows that have gone to New York. I've made custom hats that have gone to Michigan. Like, I've made things that have gone all across the states, and I love it. I'm not necessarily in it for the money as much as I probably should be, but I'm in it for the fact that I love what I do.
Man, I want to bust your balls something wicked. You're doing great. I love it. But a much wiser man than me always says you should be a little bit uncomfortable when you give somebody your price. And the stuff that you make is absolutely gorgeous. It has a story behind it. It's made from somebody whose beliefs line up with the folks they're buying it from. Don't ever apologize for your price. You know, your time is worth a shit ton. And here's the thing, if you're charging a little bit too much, that's okay. Because if you sell one at too much, that beats the hell out of selling two at too little. Because then you've got one left over, and because
I think my Pokemon beanies my Pikachu beanies went for like $35 a piece.
But don't ever start by apologizing for your price.
I apologize all the time. I think that's just that's a character flaw on my end. I think I say sorry all the time.
What are you, friggin' Canadian? I do it too, but yeah, I'm trying to be nice. No, I'm just giving you a hard time, but your work is awesome.
No, that's fine.
And I want everybody to make a mint off what they do, because, you know,
I'm hoping to set up to teach people to spin online, because I sell at these camps. I sell when I set up, I sell my spinner kits, and I want to start being able to sell those online, where it has a drop spindle and several ounces of wool. And I did great in Ohio. And so I've been asked to teach in Alabama. I've been asked to go back in Ohio. I always teach at prepper camp. This is probably going on my fifth year of teaching. So, I mean,
are you going to be there this year, you think?
Absolutely.
Awesome.
Rick wouldn't let me not. Rick has cussed me out when he thought I wasn't going to make it one year. So Rick is like a dad to me. If he's angry, there's no way I'm missing it. Rick and Jane would have my tail end.
Oh, they're great people. I love them. Yeah. We'll have to, once the baby gets a little bit older, we'll have to get you coming around to a few other events and spreading your wings a little bit.
Who says he can't go now?
Well, you can if you want to. I shouldn't presuppose. So.
Right. My whole thing is I don't let random strangers hold my baby. It's taking the same precautions, but it's like, if you don't, I mean, he's getting an immune system, but the whole thing is this is his world now. He didn't pick who his parents were going to be. And if he did, well, oof. But yeah, so this is his life now. He's going to have to learn. We camp, we rough it, we like to travel. This is just who we are. Prepping is my life, and I love to network, and I love to teach, and he's going to learn all these things whether he wants to or not. But I have a question for you.
Yes.
So what hobbies get you by? I know you're a handyman, but what got you into that?
Oh, pure desperation. You know, we were broke as a joke. I lost the oil patch collapsed here. I mean, you go way back when we lived on the East Coast and we had no money. So it was, if I wanted a new window in our old home, guess who had to do it? Me. I had to ask contractors. So I learned the skills that way. And I had no work. The oil patch collapsed. I'm like, you know what? Let's start something. So I tried it. And I mean, there's way more into it than that, but it took off, you know, and we eventually turned it into something big. And now I do the property management, and I sold the actual handyman business in September, just before coming to prepper camp. So what I love is just same as you, something that you're passionate about, something that you enjoy can also make you money. And I tell people that all the time, that you can help people and you can make money. They are not mutually exclusive. And for people who think they are, they're wrong. But that's what I like. I want people to grab a hold of the idea that something they're passionate about can also make them money. It doesn't have to. You can have just a hobby if you want, you know, if something just gets you out of bed in the morning, you want it, that's fine. But for me, anything for the most part I do, it's got to be part of building our empire, you know?
Mm-hmm. Oh, I absolutely agree. So what are the two major things or three major things you prep for, being that you're in Canada?
Yes. Cold for sure. That's the biggest one. I know it's hard to believe.
Heat. Oh, you said 3. Ours, I guess, would be heat, but heat's normal here. So
We got 111 a couple of years ago for a solid week. So it does get hot, but we have no humidity here. So it makes it very bearable. We have a central air system, so that helps. But no, so for me, cold, big time cold. That is the big one. The other one so we live, kind of the direct view of winds right down from a very big oil holding facility, the largest in Canada, actually. So for me, it would be a fire or something there, not necessarily intentional, but unintentional. We've had at least one since we've lived here. It wasn't a big deal, but you just need to know, okay, which way do prevailing winds go? We head south. Mm-hmm. Also in our town, a train derailment. That we have lots of trains that come through here right in town with oil and all the chemicals on it, right? So cold, train derailment, a fire in Hardesty, and wildfires have become a thing in Alberta. They don't tend to be that big of a thing right where I live, but the smoke sucks bad.
I have a mosquito right here.
Oh my God. The only mosquitoes I seen were the white ones flying around outside.
No, there's a mosquito hovering around my desk. I was trying to catch it, which explains why I've been getting eaten up. Yeah, so the mosquitoes don't die down here. They're year round. I'm going to admit, in South Carolina, it kills me. They don't die.
For us, so one of the things that people won't get, so you were talking about all the twisty and turny roads, right? Mm. They don't exist in Alberta. So Alberta and Saskatchewan were basically straight, right? They're basically flat land. And when they divided them back however many years ago, I don't know, 100 years ago, they did land locations. So the entire province is broken up into 1 mile square cubes. So every mile you go east, there's a northwest road going basically the whole length, short of if it runs into a slough or something. So there's no such thing as a shortcut in the prairies. Everything is right angles, and occasionally there'll be a highway that cuts through it. That helps, though, in the fact that unless you live in a big city, bugging out or getting away from an event isn't that big of a deal. For us, we have, three routes of egress. The only way we don't want to ever go is north, because, I'm going to end up at the Arctic Ocean or Santa Claus, right? And
doesn't Canada have a lot of regions that are really inhospitable?
Well, I live in one, so there's that. But
so you're central Canada now, though, aren't you?
I'm in the prairie, so I would be north of North Dakota, north of Montana.
Okay. So geez Louise.
Yep, it's dry
above our Midwest.
Exactly. Yeah. So we get, we get dry summers, we get dry winters, we get like I said the other night, minus 46. So it was as cold as
the heat of your summers, though?
We'll get around 100, but we've been up to 110 before, but we don't get
what's the heat index or the
0.
humidity?
We have almost. If Chris Dixon's in here, it's beautiful because I grew up, so I could be outdoors in 30, 35 degrees Celsius here, which is very, very hot for you guys. I don't know what that would be. I don't know. Somebody can do it
Celsius
for me. That's really hot.
Over here, like
I know. But if I were in Nova Scotia where I grew up at 25, so like let's say the difference between 90 and 80, it felt way warmer at 80 with humidity.
30 degrees Celsius is 86 degrees Fahrenheit, which is not that.
No, sure. We would be out. We would work in the oil patch to about plus 35. So that'd be in, the low 90s. But I can handle that out here with a dry air way better than I could even 10 or 15 degrees colder on the East Coast with the, 100% humidity. And the air conditioning works great out here too, because it pulls that moisture out of the place,
Mm-hmm. See, and that's something that throws me off is people who come down here is like, oh, it's so hot. And I'm like, I like the heat. I'm accustomed to the heat. And so for me, I'm used to 90 plus with 110 heat index. Now, the only thing I am not enjoying about the East Coast is there's not so much the humidity, but the moisture that everything molds so quickly.
Hmm.
So bananas here are sold green for the very fact within 3 days they will already start turning. And I don't mean
Oh,
yellow, I mean they will start to bruise. I like my bananas yellow. I don't mind them having black spots on them, but you have to buy for bananas for me. I can only buy what I will eat within a week's time because by that fifth day or that seventh day, they're almost no good. Everything molds so quickly, even in the refrigerator on the coldest setting. So you don't buy certain things that you can't put up. Everything, even juice. I've had juice mold. You've opened
oh,
it, taken a
yeah.
sip out of it, and you go back, and within a few days, there's mold floating on it, which drives me insane. That is the one thing about the East Coast, and I've heard the same about the West Coast, is because of the ocean, for whatever
Hmm.
reason, and the moisture in the air, everything molds so quickly. So I'm going to be honest with you. I want to start my sourdough starter, but I'm so terrified it's going to mold. So that's been my hold back on starting it.
Well, I spent 2 or 3 weeks there in Tennessee working on our property earlier last year. And there were some hot days. And I was talking to my buddy Sean and his wife Dawn. And Dawn told me, she goes, you just got to get used to being sweaty. She goes, you're just going to be wet all the time. And I was like, okay, I can
It's
embrace it.
really not that bad. You do acclimate. You hear
Sure.
that of
Yep.
about people saying, "Oh, you should go north, you'll acclimate." No. I'm sorry. Not me. I love the heat. Been the heat all my life. I actually had one year where I had to wear flannel long sleeve shirts all summer long because I had received some sort of weird burns from some plants when I was cleaning out a
Mm.
field that I kept flannels on and I got acclimated to it that I was fine with being out in 100 plus temperature with long sleeve flannels. So you get used to the heat. Yes, initially you're going to be sweating. Initially you're going to be hot, but you do it. I feel like the summers are easier to adjust to than the
Sure.
winters up north. Because I think if you put me in your weather, I'm going to look like the little brother off of A Christmas Story,
Oh,
in
yeah.
which my arms are not going down.
So true. And you know what? Becky has never really acclimatized to it either. She doesn't like the cold
Send her
either. And
here. Tell her I've got an extra room. She is more than welcome here.
she would, yeah. Oh man, it was so, yeah. Chris Dixon says he'd love to acclimate to the South, and I would too. What I found was during my time down there, I actually didn't use the air conditioning that much. I would drive around. It felt
Mhm.
better to have a window
So,
down.
right, I drove with the windows down. The only time I really considered running air conditioning in the car is when my children were little or
Right.
when it was beyond something I thought was comfortable for them. So I'd run air then. But elsewise, I drive with the windows down. I grew up with the windows being down when you drove, and it's more comfortable because you feel like you adjust to the temperature outside and everything else that's going on.
Now in Alberta, where it's like dry, rock dry all the time, I'll have air
Hmm.
conditioning on because it works. And there's something about that change in temperature. But when you're in a humid environment, I noticed that growing up on the East Coast in Nova Scotia as well, air conditioning doesn't seem to have the same effect. So you're almost
Mm-mm.
better to just have air moving across you. So
Right. And so that is something to tell you. You see the ceiling fans outside on the porches in the South.
yeah,
And it's not because it's going to do cool air, but it circulates the air that's around you. And in those high humidity areas, that circulation is enough to cool you off because there's moisture in the air. Um, I traveled to Oklahoma City in
mm,
Oklahoma for a trip years and years ago, and we went to the zoo. I will tell you right now, dry heat nearly killed me. They actually have watering stations or misting stations every so many feet at the Oklahoma Zoo because of the dry heat. Right, exactly. As Byron said in the chat, warm moving air is better than no air. But you get used to it because the whole point is you want to
Tim Riley says, y'all are nuts. Air conditioning was given to us by God. I keep my house and car cold enough to hang meat. I keep my
no,
house
thank you. More power to you. That is not my home. Honestly, my favorite temperatures were between 74 and 76. Ever since my son was born, and because of hormones, I think I keep it at a balmy 72, 71ish, and that's still a little cool for me. But until I adjust, I'll probably go back to the higher temperatures. But yeah, I commend you. I couldn't do it. I'm one of those people. I do not want to be cold in my own house. During the summer, I don't like to be cold. I grew up actually, we didn't have a lot of air conditioning. So I'm used to having a sheet on the bed during the summer and a blanket on the bed during the winter. So it's just,
I think
he's going to think I'm insane for that one.
But what am I? I got to look. Yeah. So 4 days from now, it'll be 10 years since I moved to Alberta. And
wow. I
remember about the first 2 months, the worst. I couldn't breathe. Nosebleeds. I don't want to get into too much details, but
allergies?
I don't know exactly what it is, but when you grow up in a humid environment your whole life and you're all of a sudden gone to a zero humidity area, everything's dry, everything. And you get everything in. And it took about 2 months for me to finally get adapted to it. But now I can kind of float back and forth. I don't know, maybe my system's just kind of in there,
Well, I think it's anywhere, because I went from Arkansas, Mississippi, which the weather is very much the same, to South Carolina. And I actually had to deal with allergies for the first time in 30-something years of my life. And I was told because the reason was because the pollination is different.
Sure. Yep.
And that was a big thing. But yeah, I deal with, we live in a 2-story that I have to keep a humidifier in our room or I will wake up dried. I can't do a ceiling fan. I have to tell my partner, you can do a box fan all night long, but you can't run the ceiling fan unless you're running the humidifier. Because if I wake up with dry sinuses, I'll be sick within a few days. I just can't.
And that's what Dixon says. He says it's the dry. It dries out your sinuses and mucus things. So.
But well, Jordan, you get used to living a certain way. Sorry.
No, you're good. I didn't mean to cut you off, but we've been just about an hour and a half. We did great. So anything else you wanted to cover quick before we finish up, or how can people find you? That's the important thing, so that they can follow up and throw money at you.
Okay. So I am with Prepper Broadcasting Network. My show is Pheonix Survival. You can always reach out to me directly through the network, through email, which is, hold on, I gotta pull it up real quick and
like I said, you go ahead and look it up. I linked your Instagram is in all the places. So if anybody's listening, they're like, I'd like to find out more about Jordan.
Yeah, it's my email is pheonix-survival@proton.me. And you reach out, send me an email. I do have an Etsy. Like I said, I've still got to work on getting my website up. That's probably been 2 years, but a lot has happened within 2 years.
Sure.
So, but elsewise, if you've got questions, you have ideas, if you need something wool made or shipped, let me know. I have no problems shipping it wherever. Yeah, I'm always up for working with people. I know you mentioned something about making a sweater for a dog, so I've been waiting on that.
Oh yeah, see, you ask anybody, any of the delinquents, every one of them will tell you, I have the greatest intentions in the world and I have the worst memory to match, so I suck at that.
Well, no. So you haven't talked to James enough. I am the world's best at staying on your ass until you get things done.
Good.
That is the perfect woman trait I have. I know how to annoy the crap out of you until you do it. So
my Angus needs one. So I will hang on. Yeah, hang on after the show here for a minute, and we'll figure it out. I would like that. So
no worries.
Thank you, Jordan. This was great. I appreciate it. We got to come back on again if you want to. Anytime you got a show idea, I'd love to have you back if you're up for it.
Absolutely.
Sounds good. If you want to hang in the back for a second, I'm just going to close the show up, and I'll be right back with you.
Yes, sir.
So, guys, I hope you enjoyed that. It's been way too long not bringing Jordan on here. I should have done it a long time ago. And she reached out to me and she's like, hey, I'd like to come on. Let's do this North versus South thing. And it worked. I loved it. So, guys, support her. If you are looking to figure out some things about crocheting, or if you just want to hear a little bit about Jordan's life and how she is the literal embodiment of a phoenix and how she's rose from the ashes, how life kind of beat her up, threw her on the ground, and she's just like, you know what, forget it. I'm going to get up and I'm going to build exactly the life I want to live. Then give her a follow, guys. She's over on the Prepper Broadcast Network feed, but also show her some support over on Instagram as well. And if you can figure out a way to throw some money at her, do it, because she deserves it. She's a hardworking lady and a hardworking family lady. So with that, guys, I appreciate you. And as always, stay happy, stay healthy, and have a great week.